technology industry and how it is.
It has been the technology
on turning other people's jobs into short-term profit.
Okay, so
It's shrinking.
what you've been describing for like the technology, that was the second part of my premise. Throughout history, all of our ways of communicating with each other on who's doing what and what the value of it is this worth $2? Because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, this might have only been 50 cents. Right? Why is that change in the purchase power of your monetary system? It's a communication between the two of us, an agreement that this piece of paper has some equivalent value of real things.
Yes.
But the value of that piece of paper is subjective, and that is bad. The reason why is because
is it though? So I don't.
It absolutely is.
I don't see. Well, it depends. I mean, it's like Einstein's theory of relativity, right? So it depends on the perspective of the observer. Like if you can consider that something is staying still and you're measuring everything else as opposed to the movement of that thing, but in reality it's all shifting. The money's shifting, the cost of this thing is shifting, the cost of labor is shifting. It all depends on what's available and what people have a need for.
But it ends up back to scarcity. And technology has changed that on a very fundamental level, where there are certain things available to humans now that are in abundance that never existed before.
Yes.
Technology and the ability to magnify our productivity through mechanical and electrical means that one farmer can farm 300 acres by himself.
Yes.
Whereas before that would be in an entire village of folks doing the same amount of labor.
So what's the rest of the village supposed to do? So the problem is the automation made it so that so much less is done, but the automation is owned by the people with the most,
right.
And their mindset is, I want to get all of it for me.
Right. So that I want to get all of it for me stems from a scarcity mindset. So if everybody is
which is
entrenched,
often tied to past trauma and
right. So now if you actually have an abundance system, right, a form of universal basic income. But how do you pay for universal basic income? That's everybody's big question and big gripe. Okay?
Yeah.
You pay for it through the technology. If you're tied to a sustainably produced kilowatt credit, then the dwelling that you live in is solar powered and can theoretically produce enough or you're allocated enough solar production in your dwelling and on whatever property that you have, mm-hmm. that gives you enough credits to live without needing a job, the dole, as it were. But the dole is manufactured by sunlight. It's manufactured by solar panels. It's manufactured by the machines. You are genuinely shifting the burden of a basic standard of living onto machines instead of onto other humans, which right now that is the case. That is why we have poverty.
I agree with most of what you're saying, except that I don't think it should be the energy that you should focus on, but on the production capacity. Because, it's all of this stuff that actually produces anything. Like, energy is a resource that you need.
But it's the energy, electricity specifically, is the ubiquitous resource that translates across all civilizations on the planet.
Except it's another variable thing.
It isn't, though.
We are better off
as a society
if we use
benchmarked
less
by a nuclear reactor. And no, not by the more efficient...
Is nuclear reactor the best way to go?
It's the cheapest economically.
With current market conditions.
No, period. By resource, by the amount of resources necessary to produce a kilowatt. That's what I'm basing everything on. Our natural resources necessary to produce a kilowatt.
Okay, so here...
The infrastructure necessary for all of the fossil fuels, for instance.
Yeah.
Right? The mining, the extracting, the refining, the constant fuel, and the energy density that you're getting out of a volume of that fuel.
Yeah.
On everything else. And then the pollutants, the damage to the environment from the pollutants, and if you were to come into what it would cost to clean all of that up, and all of its sub-uses, like the fossil fuels industries is extraordinarily expensive. When you talk about pure natural resources, Nukes are extraordinarily inexpensive.
Right.
The amount of uranium that you need to mine is minuscule compared to the amount of oil you need to mine for the same bang for the buck.
Yes.
And you're producing steam on the other end, and even more concentrated radioactive. We used to call it waste, and it's fucking not, by the way. We now have the technology to utilize every ounce of radioactive isotopes that come out of uranium. Are you fucking kidding me? It's rare earth stuff. It's like scientists are like, oh, we need to crack back into those. We have new reactor designs that we can utilize because the technology has advanced 70 fucking years since we started breaking the atom in the 40s.
Yeah.
Okay? 50s. The USS threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as a benchmark, and if it's a sustainable kilowatt hour that is the basis of the economy, everybody's incentive is to make more efficient because it costs literal your credits to power everything.
Right.
So power efficiency is inherently on everybody's radar because it's tied to the money that's being used to produce, being used to use, being used to replace. So it inherently incentivizes sustainability throughout society because your credit, your dollars, are a communication tool derived from, right now, debt. Every time I hand you dollars, we're exchanging debt. And that's and the interest on that debt, it's cancerous. And we're trying to get more and more and more dollars to cancel out all of this more and more debt. And these instabilities throughout, the banks fucking lending and the Fed rates and all of this weird instabilities because the dollar has no inherent value.
Because
it's
everything
just
we're
subjective
doing,
to everything.
Everything we're doing beyond apes is concepts.
So you tie the concepts to measurable phenomena. A kilowatt hour is measurable. The resources necessary to create that kilowatt hour is measurable.
Yeah.
Right? And if you tie and it's scalable. And that's another key fact, is that as our civilization expands and we create more houses and we create more power plants, like our civilization is based on electricity. So if you want to know, it is though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, electricity is definitely necessary for everything we do. But at the end of the day, what we are based on is consumerism and self-interest and, working for rich people in order to have enough money to buy shit that we don't need.
I understand.
Yeah.
But that's because our monetary system isn't tied to...
we're insane.
Well, no, man. I don't think...
I mean at a societal level.
Right. Because the societal level's currency system is based in... We don't fucking know.
We're not controlled by a currency system.
You absolutely are. How come you're so worried about getting money right now?
Well, as individuals, we are trapped. But as a society, we are not if we change how we think about this stuff. And so, I guess from my mindset, in order for things to change enough for your idea to make sense, I'm not sure if it's still going to be needed. Because, where I see things going is a much more distributed approach, where, the people in a given area are trying to create just enough energy to sustain what they're doing. And since they don't have to waste a whole bunch of effort doing work for other people because everyone's so divided, and they can just work together in order to improve things for themselves, they don't need as much energy, and they don't need a nuke. They need some solar panels. Because we don't have to waste our time working for other people all the time. We can work on the things we're passionate about. And we can just worry about producing enough in order to sustain the group. Because you can't create a system that will protect everyone.
Why not?
Because systems are theoretical concepts. Like, what really happens are people who have free will. And as long as you're thinking on the global scale, all of the people who have different opinions and are going to act against and look for the loopholes and ways to exploit it and, do what is still legal and not, ethical, we're going to be a mess. Like, what we've been doing is jumbling everything up into massive investments. Like, everyone dumps their money in the stock market. The government encourages us to put the money in the stock market. You get penalized if you take out your 401k. And who gets access to that money? Well, you get the bankers who are, pulling money out of Russia, and most of it's bullshit. The government spends extra in order to keep the economy going, but all of the money ends up going to the people at the top who use it to buy up the real wealth. So, and so we're perpetually eating ourselves up as a society.
So what you're describing is caused by directly
what is
the
it?
fact
What is that snake that eats itself?
Orbeus?
Orbeus, yeah.
So, but that is caused by a fiat currency system, global fiat currency system that are essentially
by the behavior of the people.
That's the basis of this weird inequity in wealth.
We have a money-centered society,
right? And if we had an energy,
that's a psychological problem.
Exactly. But if the money is tied to sustainable energy, then by definition, that money-centered society will then become a sustainable energy-centered society.
What it incentivizes is for
you need money. If you yes,
it incentivizes people to create energy,
sustainable energy,
to create sustainable energy.
Okay,
but
what does sustainability mean?
Right.
What does it mean? It means forever.
I get why sustainable energy is better than non-sustainable energy. But if you incentivize everyone to create sustainable energy, then people aren't incentivizing the production of the stuff we need to survive, like food.
Of course you are. Absolutely you are.
Well, if you just create energy, it'll be much better. Because you can just, skip the middleman. Don't worry about producing any goods. You can just create the energy. And that's a passive
But what
way
is
to
the
make
energy
money.
used for?
Right, someone has to buy
goods.
it. Well, somebody has to do more with the energy.
Right.
But if you incentivize all of the communities to focus on the energy creation, you're not incentivizing them to produce things. If you incentivize the production piece, but on a community level, so the goal isn't to, maximize production, but to produce enough, it will take energy, but you only need enough energy to achieve that production goal.
But what is your production goal? What standard of living are you getting to?
That's the focus. That should be the focus. What do we want this to look like? Let's figure out how to build it, and then it's going to cost something.
Right, and so
everything else is
everything that, again,
like something uncontrollable, largely uncontrollable. I understand that theoretically all of this stuff is changeable, but the higher up in terms of like concepts you go, it's the harder it is to change. Like convincing everyone to change how they think about money is
not convincing how anybody thinks about money. It
changes who creates money.
It changes who creates money. No, it changes what is required for that money to be in existence. It has to be backed up by genuine power.
Right. So
production.
there is a valid question here about whether or not the money that exists should be backed up by something. And I can see an economic system that works in either scenario, where it is or it isn't. I can see either way working, but what we actually have is sort of a combination of everything that people are doing, and that's what we always have. And some of that is, exploitative individuals. Some of that is crime. Some of it is authoritarians. Some of it is, that's reality. That's the Tao. That's the,
Okay. But all you're saying is that's the current paradigm. And
well,
what I'm offering
is
a logical paradigm shift that has no downsides other than its implementation resources.
What I'm saying,
and has massive global upsides and answers a significant chunk of our society's problems.
What I'm saying is that what we live in isn't a concept, but the reality of what people are doing, and you can't change what people are doing.
Of course, you can
through concept. Well, you can.
Cryptocurrency is how many years old? And
Cryptocurrency is a Ponzi scheme.
Okay.
I mean, it may not have intended to be that, but that is how it is acting.
But here's
because
why.
Because of the behavior
and you don't
of the
think
investors.
the dollar is a Ponzi scheme?
No, it's being treated the same way by the same people. We have a mindset that converts everything into Ponzi schemes.
But you can't
because
you
we're
can't
infatuated with
affect
money.
the value of right.
But
Because we're using the
assets.
money as a communication between each other as a form of promise of labor.
We're worshiping a false idol.
Worshiping
golden
a false
calf.
idol.
It's what exists is the stuff around us, and we get lost in concepts.
So, given our current technological state, how would you suggest that you distribute the basic resources for people to live in dignity? What kind of system would you use?
Well, where I start from is where we are, which is, what people are expecting is something called capitalism.
Okay.
Now, what is actually happening is not a single thing. It's a whole bunch of different things. Like, you can't say that, the pizza shop down the street is capitalism, but, like, Goldman Sachs is capitalism. Like, they're doing completely different things. But we get lost in these concepts, and we have this idea that as long as it is legal, it is okay, and people are allowed to get away with it. But on top of that, we don't actually know what they're doing. So we assume that they're following the law, when in reality they're not. So what should we as individuals do? Well, certainly not invest our money with them, because they are literally justifying stealing from us.
Right.
So what do? We invest in each other. We invest in communities. We invest in those around us. We build tools that allow the community to be more self-sufficient, because the rest of the world is fucking nuts.
I understand that.
So what
you
got to do?
You're on the same page on that. Yep.
So now you're working together, and other communities are looking at what you're doing, and hopefully they're learning from you. And the two individual communities, like trade between groups is fine, but as long as none of the groups that are trading with each other are intent on obtaining all the money or buying all the land, and it's all about individuals just working together for themselves, not just for themselves, but like the idea of think global, act local.
So
but
I
more
understand,
of a distributed sort of
I
thing.
understand the idealism of that.
Well,
but
it's starting from where we are.
But that breaks down with bad actors. And it breaks
bad
down
actors
with...
exist. Try not to do business with them.
I understand. Right.
Don't invest in them. That's what we do right now, is we invest in them.
So, in this community of yours, how do people exchange goods and services?
Well, I want to set up a store.
I understand, but are you using the dollar?
That's what's exchanged for value here.
So,
I'm literally talking about what I want to build for you right now. Because this is where we are right now.
Right.
So, I want to build a store, and yes, I would use the dollar, because that's what's accepted as currency around here. I don't need to change currency as a concept in order to start behaving differently. I mean, I could see that working, possibly, if it is better than if it works out to be better than all of the other ideas. But I certainly have no influence over any of that. But I do have influence on what's happening right here, right now.
This is true. Innovation Village? So you want to start with a shop store?
I was thinking shop store, because you got a bunch of stuff you want to sell, and a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that presumably need to sell things.
Can you find a way to sell 3D printed parts? Is that something you're interested in? And getting the printer bank up and running?
Can we get...
Because
we need to figure out sales. We need to figure out how to get revenue coming in. I'm not a sales guy. I think we should find a sales guy. But, I have no problem with doing that. I don't know how to, I've never turned...
So for sales I would have to talk to my buddy Bob Cody.
Yeah.
Because he's been my sales guy for all my welding supplies and stuff for a decade. He's really good at it. And he understands
he
that
stopped
sentiment.
in the other day.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know if you got the message or not.
He may be able to help as far as a system and stuff. But I think that's enough